Hello, everyone. I'm Nicolas Versin. I'm the founder and CEO of UE. Thanks for joining today for this session. I'm really happy to have today with me John. Hi, John, um, from Dataception. So I think, as you probably saw on the post, if you joined today, so we've been I don't know, in contact for a few years now with John,
That's
and
right.
had a lot of discussion, heated discussion about data product, data strategy, value, how to help companies transform all this kind of fun things. And but it's a long time we had scheduled to have that that talk together, and so I'm really happy to have you today and talk about data products. So maybe to start, if you want to introduce yourself quickly, what you do at Dataception, and we can get going.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thanks, Nicholas. And yeah, so we haven't known each other for a while, and it's been good. We've been trying to get this together for a while, haven't we? Now, which is great. So yeah, so for those who don't know me, I'm John Cook. I run Dataception, which is a data and AI consultancy, and we sort of really been specialising the last couple of years around data products and kind of being that you hear it a lot, but there's that sort of nexus between the business, data, and product management. Obviously, if you've seen me on LinkedIn, I'd have quite an opinionated view of data products, which is I'm hoping to deep dive a little bit more into on this one. But yeah, been in the industry like 30 years and been through the whole big data, AI type stuff, doing a lot of work around LLMs as well. So there's lots of interesting stuff going on here. And every time I think I've gone through a big technology and data epoch, there's another one coming up. So yeah, really exciting times to do this.
Yeah, the good news with data and AI today is that there is a little chance to get bored with what's happening. So it's
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So please, and please, anyone, don't hesitate to ask question in directly in LinkedIn during the session, because we're happy to jump in and answer them on the fly. So
just do a shout out to Val, Dan, and Gus. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hi guys. Thanks for joining. So maybe to start, so I mean, we have a few slides just to support the stuff. So it's not, we don't want to bore you with a 200 slides presentation, but I thought it would be good to illustrate a bit the things that we talk, because sometimes it can look a bit conceptual. So trying to frame that. So let's go. So maybe let's jump into it. And if you want to start, John, with maybe what is data product for you?
Sure. So obviously there's massive amounts of sort of heated debates over data products and kind of what they are, and data product management and stuff. So I put this little graphic together just to kind of really concentrate my mind and kind of what the outcome is, where data product, really product management, which is really the sort of thing I'm trying to bring into kind of the world of data, and where I see data product really fitting. And we've got a nice little Venn diagram. Who doesn't love a Venn diagram, right? And I see data product sitting literally in that kind of nexus of business strategy, data analytics, and product management. And it's this is something I think a lot of people kind of struggle to get their heads around. I mean, if you step outside of data, product management generally is not that well known or well understood. And I've been through that a few times with startups and other organizations going through the full product management life cycle. And bringing that into data is actually quite tricky, because sometimes you're quite far away from the coalface and quite the business people. You're delivering data sets rather than end-to-end products and stuff. So I sort of put this together to sort of really just frame what we're trying to do. Ultimately, you're trying to drive a business strategy in my mind, but you're just using data analytics to do it, and you're applying product management sort of approaches and principles to doing that. And that kind of is what this is trying to think. I mean, I don't know, Nicholas, what are your thoughts around this visualization? And
yeah, that's and I kind of like it, because it's avoiding looking at it from a technical standpoint, which is always kind of the message I'm trying to my battle, I would say. And indeed, I think it's really important to look at it as it's a mean to an end, and the end is to support the strategy, and then it comes with obviously bringing that value from data analytics, and you need practices to tackle that, and this is where product management comes in. So basically, that's I think yeah, I really like it. It's both simple and obviously it's a Venn diagram. So so we have to have one for each presentation. So.
And I know we're going to talk a bit more about right sort of the end what a data product is. And for me, it's you know, before diving into it, these are the things we keep in the front of our mind. It's like, how do we drive that change? How do we drive that strategy? How do we support the business? And so obviously we'll go through that in a bit more detail. But yeah, it's almost like what we want it is a little badge in the corner of this kind of Venn diagram to see this, so we don't lose sight of where we're, you know, what context we're in. So.
Where we come from. And that's a good point, and indeed that's a discussion we had, and there is so many heated discussion on LinkedIn, but most of them, like, yeah, I would say we kind of agree that they fail to start from the end, which is how you want to support the organization, and not just looking at your let's say technical bits. But let's jump into, so I think the key part that you mentioned, which is a product management piece, which is how you make that alive in a way, and that's one of the foundation.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's go in. What do you mean by data product management?
Yeah. So if we sort of step back and say, you know, what's product management? I found quite a nice little quote at the top there. You know, fundamentally, it's an end-to-end business process of planning, developing, launching, and managing. Put in data and analytics orientated product or service. So again, it's the life cycle of basically how you go from a business problem, or even defining a business problem. You know, sometimes, and I work with lots of companies where they don't quite know what their business problem they want to solve, or they want to solve just give me a bunch of KPIs on my dashboard type problem, which we've all been there and done that. You know, it's like, actually, is that the right problem to solve? Is that the thing that really drives the value? So it's kind of going from that all the way through to kind of, you know, and I talk about retirement. So it's like ideation to retirement. You know, how often do you actually retire data components, pipelines, artifacts, and stuff? It's what normally happens. They're in some sort of system, and they get like, you know, the system gets basically migrated. But very few times things actually get switched off in the data world. It's just one of those things that sort of grows and grows. So it's having that kind of product management focus, using classic product management techniques for having that kind of initial value and identifying the opportunity right the way through to, you know, experimentation, build, and that type of stuff, right through to retirement. You know, and I kind of sort of put it into sort of three sort of buckets. You know, and I think the first one actually gets missed quite a lot, and this is actually one of the hardest things to do. It's the opportunity. You know, identifying the hypothesis and valuing that opportunity, like going through, and like I said, with the KPI problem. You know, is that the right problem to solve? Is that the most valuable thing that the business can do? You know, so working with the business to be able to actually define those and actually frame them and actually value them as well. And we'll talk a little bit about value in a minute. Is the kind of the first piece before you do anything. So before you define what a product is, before you talk about, you know, architecture and engineering and what have you, how do you define what the right thing to do for the business? And that's the first piece. And the next bit is really, again, around the classic product management piece, which is something, you know, about that kind of prototype, that iteration, get MVPs, wireframes, all that sort of stuff into. Can you get something in front of the business quickly and dirty? You know, it doesn't have to be like a full end-to-end piece. You know, we'd have to onboard it onto the whole platform before we do stuff. Can we actually get something in front of the business to check it out before we actually go and build it? So that kind of prototype and building, you know, and iterating of products is really, really important. And obviously then there's an industrialization piece around that. Once you say, oh, that's the right thing to build, industrialization, can we put it into the rest of the organization? You know, and then you're into the full kind of life cycle. And obviously once you've done that, once you've built it and deployed it across however you do it in your infrastructure, is managing it, and then also having a portfolio, which I think is one of the key themes of this kind of talk. Is like, you know, theoretically you've got, you know, hundreds, maybe thousands of data products, and how do you manage them? If they're all living and breathing and retire, you know, they can be retired and changed and updated. How do you kind of manage that across your whole estate? Because theoretically you're talking about, you know, thousands of different components run by different teams. And again, that's one of the kind of things about products, is they're kind of their domain and business owned. So if you've got thousands of these across your estate, how do you manage them? How do you manage them from a life cycle and project management piece as well?
Yeah, that's a good, I mean, and for me, again, that maybe that piece is, I wouldn't say the most important one, but the fact that what differentiates, you know, the project mindset and the pure design thinking approach, which is basically how to get from an idea. So and all of them have pitfalls. So I agree, they're all difficult in a way. But what is a real mindset change is that you don't only have the initial funnel of finding your products, building them, but then you need to nurture them. You need to maintain them. You need to evolve them. You need to, I don't know, merge them, kill them, and that's a really important stuff, because it has long-term implications. Otherwise you don't build long-term value. You build long-term like liability in a way, because you have things that run, that have cost, and so on and so on. So that's a really important topic. And as you say, I mean, I think there's pitfalls everywhere, because the first one might look simple, but I see maybe companies have either not enough ideas or too many, or something I was discussing earlier on with a group is that how do you balance also, like, moonshots, big stuff you want to do, and small things like, new dashboard or whatever, or small increments and so on. So that's part also of that, maybe both identification and framing of ideas. And indeed, and the middle is also, how do I avoid, I was chatting the other way with our friend Boyan, and he has this term pilotitis, like, people that pile up pilots, and either never go to production, or it's half-life stuff that continue, and you never know how to end from there. So it's also anyway. So great point. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. I'm just agreeing with you. I think it's absolutely right. Yeah.
So let's move to maybe how to do it.
Yes. So this is more of a sort of a deep dive, and kind of, again, you sort of need to break it down. The way I break it down, or we break it down, is in Dataception, is basically we have this initial point, which is, again, this hypothesis and evaluation, what you're trying to do, and we'll get into the kind of the more detail of that in the next couple of slides. Is, you want to come up with new ideas, or ideas not just for commercial ideas, but process efficiency ideas, all that sort of stuff. You need that kind of that top end of the funnel to be able to actually be creative with the business, and you need to be able to drive that with the business people. That's, again, there's lots of talk on LinkedIn around data people being business literate and business people being data literate. I mean, it's whichever way it is, you have to, and I think it's actually data people being more business literate, because business, they've got enough to worry about rather than, that type of stuff. But it's basically, drive them to be able to, and guide them to be able to actually come up with the ideas, and also come up with the real efficiencies around that. And then the next bit is about the value measurement, framing, and prioritization. And this is super important. Again, we've got another slide on this where we'll deep dive in this, but this is basically the valuation of it. Finally, is this the most valuable thing to do? And there are a number of different ways of doing it. We use RICE, obviously. Nicholas, you've got a really kind of comprehensive way of looking at value around that. And also, is it the right question? We come back to the KPI piece. Is, if someone wants a bunch of KPIs about this thing, is actually you want to optimize your team performance. If you're an operations team, how do you actually do that? Is KPIs going to help you do that? Well, it'll tell you what's going on, but it won't actually necessarily tell you what you need to do about it. What it means and what you need to do about it. So framing it in the right way is really, really important. And then the prioritization, again, that those KPIs might be great, but actually, if you've got, in 6 months' time, you're going to get a massive world event that's going to affect your operations team. You need to know about it. You need to know that something's coming up. So actually, the priority of actually developing a forecasting model around that, with seasonality and other stuff coming into it, might be a bigger priority than just getting the KPIs, because that's what's really going to drive the efficiency of your team. So it's that framing and prioritization, I think, are two things that are really important. And again, this is about us data people being, as I say, Sherpas, guides, whatever you want to call them, not just order takers saying just what do you want and that type of stuff. And the value around that is super important. And then obviously the bottom of it is the portfolio. And I guess as you go through and as you get more mature, you'll have more and more portfolios of data products, and they could be metrics, they could be forecasts, it could be whatever they are. Then you need to be able to have a way of defining those into your kind of portfolio and project or product management strategy and process, which we get into. And that's that piece. And obviously on the right hand side is having that ability to decompose that problem down. I call it the pyramid of analytic needs. So, again, rather than saying what the KPIs are, what should be the bottom piece here, which is what I call information products, it's like, what's the decision you want to make? You want to optimize your team. You want to launch a new product. You want to, have a new business initiative. What's the actual outcome? Let's break that down into kind of a decision models, forecast, metrics, and then and the data that goes along with it. And if you get into the habit of doing that kind of stuff, then you become you go from from being that kind of order taking type persona to that real business change type persona, and that to me is the leap we kind of need to make in data.
So initially I think that I like this pyramid of analytic techniques for those who don't know it yet, because it's I think it helps a lot in framing the nature of what you need to put in front of users to achieve the goals that you identify on the left hand, basically. So we know how to identify outcomes, and let's say how we're going to measure success. But then the question of what is the nature of what you need to put in hand of people and users is interesting, and I think it avoids sometimes too much confusion about what is it actually you want to deliver with that product. So I think it's really important, and I know that's also what you help tooling with Dataception in also making that almost a toolkit to achieve that in a way, and this is where I think we always meet in the right place. So, and it's so that's and maybe what do you see people, how to say, organizations struggling the most with that, with that mindset, of framing that. So I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think it says LinkedIn user, so I don't know what the name of that person is, but I think
it's Gaurav.
Sorry. It says product thinking should cover usability, feasibility, value aspects. However, challenges remain similar to when an organization paves the path to transform from project to product thinking mindset. And this is one of the core themes, I think, and it's a great point. Going from project mindset to product mindset. And again, this is one of the big challenges. There's a couple of challenges I see. I sort of encounter this day to day. If you're going to a business and you're classed as a data person, you start saying, right, I'm going to talk about how to change your business. They kind of look at you sideways and go, hang on a minute, why are you talking to me about changing my business? So there's an appetite around, and this is when people talk about data literacy in the business, it's more around an appetite for getting analytics and data to actually be seen as a change process. That's a big mindset shift for a lot of organizations. Some organizations really get it, and I spoke to one 2 months ago, and they wanted to build new analytics products to sell to their customers, and they really got in. But a lot of organizations aren't. So that's the first kind of big challenge, I think. The second one is to hit the point that's been made here, is that project to product thinking. And this isn't a data problem. This is actually a much more universal. You see this in other organizations just doing general product management. The whole, all the way from having a product which is an ongoing thing. It's not a one-time piece. And again, we can debate. A data product. If it's a one-time piece of analysis, is that really a product? Is it a service? Is it? If it's like, the CEO says, right, I want to know what happened, to my sales from the last 3 months, go away and come back with an answer. That then gets put to bed, typically, right? So is that a product or not? So we can debate that. But if you're talking about genuine products, and I always think about something like a recommendation engine for a website, that to me is a really good example of a product. But that's an ongoing thing. So you're constantly having to tune it and train it, and add features and stuff as if you would do a normal product. And that's again a different mindset in data if you're talking about delivering things which have this ongoing kind of business continuity, which a lot of times when you're talking about data with data teams, it's just the data sets or the pipelines. It's they do have that, but it's not really a business continuity. It's more of a technical continuity. It's supporting a load of other things. So those are the sort of some of the challenges. There's also things like funding. Having to go every year for pots of funding. If you go to a product company, like a tech company or a SaaS company, there's no kind of yearly, we have to get this whole new budget again. It's like we have to, we've got a continuous budget to manage the product itself. and that's continuous. And you say, oh, we need to do a new feature here. We need to do an upscale, downscale. So it really almost goes right the way through to things like funding as well. So those are the ones like sort of top of my head.
Oh, that's good. Great points, because I, ironically, because I've been in IT for a long time, as a product guy, but also working with organization. Sometimes it's very ironic, because if you think about what the data warehouse has been, or stuff like that, it's a product from the beginning. It's not like it was done a day. It's because it always needs some constant education. So. And still, I agree that the product mindset shift is a big one. But and for me, it comes, I think, again, with that kind of client-driven mindset, because you build a product. So there is two dimensions. That dimension of continuity, because it's not a one-time thing, and it's not just a service, an answer you provide. And there is a lot of analytics teams that provide one-time answers to business teams. I want to know that the KPI for that period of time. That's fine. But the product is an ongoing one. But the other dimension is to build really that client-centric approach, saying, okay, and that's linked to value. What you've been discussing about value, saying, okay, we need to have adoption of our. I always use my thing about a product need to have the 3 U's. It has to be usable, useful, and used. And so it has to be usable because you need to know how people are going to have access to it. It has to be useful because obviously it needs to serve a purpose and a business value. But it has to be used. And so and otherwise, if you don't have that product mindset, and that's still a big shift here for organization. I kind of agree with that. Absolutely. And so I just wanted to bring a very existential question from Dan. And
yes, it's a good one, Dan.
So that's like the $1 billion question, probably, for most organization. And I have a take, but I don't know if you want to give it a shot.
So yeah, I guess is the lens, how do we achieve the business strategy with data products, or achieve the business strategy generally? I think those are two very big questions. One being slightly bigger than the other.
Yeah, I think there's an elephant in the room there.
Indeed. So for me, if we come back to data products, so I use data products to drive business strategy all the time. Again, did it a little while ago, a month ago, with a business, a small startup. We basically wanted to build new products. They did things like sort of invoice finance type, and they wanted to do credit models fundamentally. So we sat in a room for a day, worked out exactly what they wanted to their customers wanted to buy, which bits they needed to sell, that kind of stuff. We worked out the valuation around it. Then we divide them up into a number of product candidates. We use some RICE scoring, if you come across RICE, the reach, impact, confidence, effort, that type of stuff. And we worked out kind of what was needed, and then also worked out what the data that was required, potential data that was required to do it. And that we did that in a day, and then they've gone away and sort of now they're building those out. But I used the data product language. I didn't actually use the word data product that much. It was basically, you need a credit model here, you need a forecast, this is a balanced scorecard, this is actually a machine learning model, this is actually, it's those types of languages, or that type of language, that I use to actually drive the conversation with the business, because most business people understand that language. It's a metric, it's a forecast, it's a decision model, it's this type of stuff. And those, to me, again, without getting into too much of data product, that's what I use to actually drive the business strategy. Obviously, it's got to come from the business, and all the other thing is, obviously, it's having a framework to be able to people to drive down, so and what I'd always say is, if they don't have, if they're struggling having a starting point, it's like, well, just tell me what you want to achieve, what's the outcome you want to do. So if they're an ops team, again, come back to, they want to increase efficiency. All right, that's how do we do that? What are the areas we need to do to increase efficiency? You've got people costs, you've got people time, you've got number of tickets, you've got resource allocation, you've got all that type of stuff. So you break it down. What do you need to make that decision? What do you need to make that decision? It's a simple question. If it's marketing, I often see marketing teams say, we want to do a single customer view. It's like, actually, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to look at your high value customers? Do you actually want to measure your campaign performance? Do you actually want to see what your customers are going to buy, propensity models, that sort of stuff? So I think using the language of the business and really trying to drive down exactly what they're trying to get to with their language, and obviously it has you've got to have that kind of knowledge of the business, which I think is really cool, really, really important, and that language of the business, but being able to decompose a problem down using that language. Really, that to me, I found that hugely successful.
Yeah, and fully agree that for me, the key and the main, how to say, fallacy or problem in IT organization is that most of the time people don't start with what you want to achieve and don't start with what the business really wants to do, or don't question them. And that's also a relationship problem sometimes. I've seen when it goes wrong, the business comes with a need, and then the data team says, but why? And the answer is, you don't have to know why, I just need it. And that's a bad way to start. But you need, if you need to manage to build trust and overcome that, to have that discussion with them, indeed, to say, okay, we need to understand what you want to do and how you're going to use it and how it's going to help. And then it's going to obviously help to drive people in the right directions. In the other hand, if you just focus on building your, let's say, enablers, like let's build a nice data platform, and only doing that, the chance that you actually support the business strategy are very low. And that's unfortunately what the path that too many people are focusing, because there's tech engineers, and we like, as engineers, focusing on engineering problems. So it can be a loophole. So
absolutely, I totally agree.
And so I think we have another great question. So maybe before jumping, we can go. It's still Gaurav. So I don't know why you show up as LinkedIn user here, Gaurav. Sorry for that. It's a tough one also. Scattered data, limited domain awareness, implementing that product strategy stuff, because business seeks speed and lacks fair principle. And so, Sam, do you want to start that, John, or I can give it a go?
I've got a quite interesting answer, but you go first this time.
So I think that it's not like it's a magic stick answer there, but what I always say is two things: that the strategy, again, if you need to start from the business strategy, because the business strategy has long-term and short-term things to achieve. So if you have a business strategy that is only short-term, anyway, your direct product strategy is going to be, maybe you don't have a direct product strategy, but it will be, everything will be short-term, but usually. And it's part of going back to, the value exercise and the framing exercise, to understand how you can build things that are going to support both a balance of short-term things and long-term things. So that's that one end. The other one, which is also maybe a bit tricky, is to you need to build a vision of where you want to go, and then use increments to go there. And so if you just spend, you won't, today in current world, like a few years back, people who are managing to sell big data lake project for 5 years and 20 million euros and so on. And I don't think it make any sense. I don't think it made any sense, but I don't think it makes any sense today. And I don't think you will ever get funding for that. So in a way, you need to use that. Okay, what is the vision? Having a map of the things you need to build in our capabilities, but look at it as how can you enable, business value, incremental business value, and show and build trust and so on. So it's always about, I think, like you said, sitting with a business, finding enablers, showing value, and so on. And the more you deliver like quick wins and project first, it also allows you to get budget and time to build maybe longer term things. And it's always a balance, like a product mindset. You can look at your overall strategy as a product itself, and all the small things you do are ways to build on your roadmap. And it's it's the same for our product. We build small things here and there, but at the end they build up to be your big vision. So I think that again, that's not easy, but it's the only way to build a strategy effectively is to sit with the business and to make it speaking to them, so that ultimately, the more you go, the more you will build that trust. And of course, you also need, and maybe I finish with that, some. I think you mentioned what you mentioned at the beginning. You need build some visibility, and that's why sometimes when I spoke about the portfolio and what we do at UE, I start with a teenager room, which is like all messed up, and I say that's probably what your strategy looks like today, and your portfolio looks like today. And obviously,
Tidy your room.
if it's a mess and you have dirty clothes everywhere and you don't know, then it's not you can't do anything with that. So there is an underlying job of cleaning the mess or organizing it or inventorying it, and again, you don't need to look at it as a big upfront work, but on the go you need to build discipline to document your stuff, to build the inventory. That's what we call the portfolio, actually. That's a portfolio of products, a portfolio of data sets, a portfolio of different things. So yeah, basically it's an incremental work.
And absolutely, and I think this is key. I think there's still this kind of view that we need to get all the data in one place. And I know there's people with different sides of the spectrum on this. Getting data all in one place before we even start. And I think it's actually the other way around. Like I said, the incremental piece is like you have to start small. What it says basically, that question is basically what are the pieces to it? And for one, it's that being able to have a framework to guide the business quickly, have an agility framework to actually be able to put things in front of people quickly, and also this ability to be able to go across the organization, pick up different bits of data, and actually model and prototype and get them in front of the business, and then iterate around in an agile kind of fashion. And that kind of goes, I think, to that. There's a second question on there about how does this compare to traditional other data architectures? And I think this is really the kind of UX approach, where I'm taking the bits out of the organization that I need to get to that use case, but I'm doing it in a fast, agile, but also structured way. And I think there's a framework for actually needed for actually being able to drive the business, and like our pyramid process does that. There's also a fast way of gathering the data and then constructing a product, a business-facing product. That could be a piece of UX with a model, with some data and that kind of stuff, prototyping that, getting that in front of the business. You don't have to build industrial connections to all your systems. Just get the data out of it, put it into a sandbox area, prototype it, show it to the business. And then once you've iterated around on that, because it's also about proving feasibility around, because they might say you want to do a forecast, but you haven't got the data to do it. You want to do that. You want to prove that out really quickly, and one, from business value, and two, actually feasibility, because the data, if you don't have the data, you can't do it. So getting that ability to kind of iterate quickly, prototype, MVP, whatever you want to call it, and then having a process again to be able to actually industrialize that really, really quickly. And again, this is kind of comes back to the second question around a lot of traditional data architects are all about trying to model everything up front, and I'm quite vocal around I don't think you need to model as you go. You need to the data you come in and and you can build taxonomies, and you can build kind of graph models to showing the kind of end-to-end process, but you need to do it as you go rather than try and do it all at once. And I think this is one of the big differences between around the traditional data architects who are trying to model things like domain-driven design and stuff like that. I think you need to bring in almost like attribute by attribute, then to say actually what's that part of that business process, because you might have two use cases, especially in analytics, that use the same data for completely different things. If you try and merge those together in some kind of amorphous domain model, you're going to A, it's going to take you a long time, B, it's going to be tricky, and C, you're going to throw away stuff because you're going to make compromises. And I think really getting that process going, and and actually building these kind of, we call them taxonomy, is actually something called a folksonomy, which is actually a crowdsourced way of actually building out metadata and models and stuff like that as well. And that to me is really one of the fundamental shifts that needs to happen inside the data world.
I can't be more in sync with that, because I think that, those disciplines exist and make sense for very targeted problems. That's not the general approach. It should be like if you build your unique client repository or stuff like that, you need to approach that. But the main thing is that many times you don't know how people are going to use the data, so you don't know the answer. So and it's almost presumptuous to believe that you can do it outside of because you won't talk with the business, and you don't have time for, even time to boil all the ocean of potential use cases and so on. So that's definitely definitely the case that you need to build. So I don't think there is a good reason to not go in a way to building things with incremental products today. And I don't think that the talent lack is an excuse in there, or a bottleneck more than anything else, because actually it might be easier in a way from a purely technical standpoint, because you don't try to again build something that is extremely complex conceptually, and you have a much more focused approach. So in a way it should be easier to deliver more targeted things and to build that knowledge and talents pool and so on the way more gradually as you go. So I'm not saying it's the one-click answer to it, but I don't think that's an excuse to not go for it in a way. So
yeah, there is also another overlay, and we just get touch on data architecture, which is probably for a better set for another session. But the other thing about this is, they're tagging rather than transforming. That's something I talk a lot about. It's basically when you are bringing in raw data, you are you're adding metadata on top of it for different use cases, and then you're curating that in something like a data product catalog, which is actually a search-based thing, rather than trying to conform it into kind of unified models. That approach, if you can do it well, and again, needs a bit of tech and a bit different way of thinking about things. You're still doing data modeling, you're still doing taxonomies and stuff, but you're not doing it through transformation. You're actually just tagging data, and you're curating it through that way. That's quite a shift for a lot of people in terms of the sort of modern data architecture. And if you think about what I call a data product could be, like 1,000 metrics that go across the whole organization, run by different people. They all use potentially different attributes, but they're all part of a kind of holistic catalog, which I can go and search and all that sort of stuff. But those metrics are using almost like the raw data. You get the best of both worlds. You still get your modeling, you still get your kind of curation and your understanding of kind of how it maps to your business process. But actually, you're not spending all your time trying to contort it into kind of centralized models. And I think that is something that's still quite new and quite difficult to the mindset shift that needs to happen. But that's definitely another session. But it's that to me is one of the differences in the architecture approach that we need to do. Bring kind of product thinking and data products themselves.
Yeah, that's probably, and maybe we'll touch again that on the end, but because it's more some of the things in the mesh approach, in the sense that you want also to move to a federated approach to building knowledge and complexity, and not having like a big brain, unique brain, being able to centralize all that complexity. So it's kind of a decentralization of it. We'll see if we have time to go back to it again at the end. So maybe we can talk a bit about the value piece, because that's something we mention a lot, and something that we're discussing a lot with let's say our respective clients and so on. And so one thing that is interesting with value, because we said in the previous one that, and you mentioned the fact that, okay, you need to frame business products against business outcomes, and then the question is how you're going to do measurement, because it's going to be used both to get the right funding or the right tailoring, of how much your effort you're going to spend there versus your expected value against the horizon to which you will have that value also, and stuff like that. But the measurement piece is something that people are struggling with always a lot, because it means a lot of different things, measurement. So, somehow I can start by the bottom. People are thinking about data quality, and you say, hey, you can do measurement of data quality. Is that helpful? Yes. Is that helpful for the executive committee? Probably not, because it's really hard to understand how is that embedding anything. And sometimes, when I discuss with the data management team, saying, oh, we struggle to build the case for data quality and to the business users, usually the answer would be obviously, because it doesn't make any sense for them. And it's the same if you try to sell them your underpowered server or whatever. I mean, it's not very actionable and not very helpful. So what we've done here is to and that's kind of helpful to understand, is that you need to map your measurement to who is you're talking to in the organization, in a way, and then who's going to, because then each of those levels makes sense, but for different audiences. So if you talk to the CFO or the CEO of the company, probably they care about financials because at the end they run the company for that, and they need to care about it. But if you just do direct financial evaluation of your project and investment, it's really difficult to do, and maybe and it won't speak to many people in the organization. On the other hand, if you go one level lower, you're talking more about OKRs and business KPIs. So which is how the business leaders, how the business teams are measuring their own performance and how they're contributing to the business. So usually this is why organizations move into OKRs, because it's a way to split the high-level financial objectives into something that is actionable for in the context of the different business processes. And so that's a way to measure the outcomes part, the other part is more looking into enablers, so the efficiency and the performance of your own teams who are delivering those products. And you have different questions. One is the overall performance, because when we talk about data product, we have data engineering, cloud, data scientists, so a lot of different people involved. So how efficient it is across those teams, and you have bottlenecks and so on. And if you move into each of those teams, you have what I call here the X ops, data ops, ML ops, AI ops, DevOps, etc., FinOps. And so each of those ops is automation and usually measurement. I don't know any DevOps team who doesn't do measurement. Otherwise, I don't know what there is a missing piece in there. And that measurement is also about how efficient are you with deployment, what's your cycle time, how many hours you have, downtimes, etc., etc. And then if you move to the underlying one, it's more what we call observability today: data observability, microservices observability, infrastructure observability, and so on, where you look at the quality and cost of things. So usually it's helpful to organize, your value metrics, your measurement into those different pieces, because it's how you're going to also be able to connect them to see, okay, how one has the impact on the other one, and how far should we go. So that's one end. And the other one that is important, it links to that notion of continuity, is that when should you measure? And that's always a big discussion. And I think the main one is you need to establish that baseline at the beginning. So that's an important one, and sometimes forgotten. So then if you don't have that baseline, then you don't know how to measure progress. But then you need to define a process also and a rhythm which you're going to report on that, because some of it is automated, like your XOps metrics are going to be every day and so on. But some of it might require some business inputs or some human crowdsourcing of information or validation and so on. So you can't do that every day. So you need to build that in and make sure that it feeds your feedback loop for your product. So it's not just about measuring for the sake of measuring. It's not only about measuring to report to the executive committee. It's measuring to inform your product management lifecycle and take better decisions and adjust the portfolio and so on and so on.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you talk about the sort of data mesh, and it's findable, addressable, it's got to be valuable, got to be usable, those sorts of things. How do you know those things? Same with FAIR, it's how do you know if it's any of those things, because they're supposed to be smart objectives, right? So you could have data products being the measurement of your data products, right? You could go down a bit of a rabbit hole there, but you could do. Now ultimately, if you take the test-driven development kind of mentality, if you can't measure it, you can't really build it, because actually if you build it, you have no idea if it's going to be successful. So I think definitely the measurement.
Exactly, and the other thing you need to avoid is and by mapping that to the right level, it helps is to avoid what I call vanity metrics sometimes, and that's something we've been discussing also, is that if you just measure the quality of your product by, I don't know, how quickly it runs, but no one uses it, maybe you're wrong. And even usage sometimes might be misleading. So you really need to make sure that you avoid just focusing on very complex measurement metric on one hand, and you need to avoid going through wrong vanity metrics on the other hand. So, and by putting things at the right level, it helps you also understanding who's the audience for that metric, and is it helpful to inform the right level of outcomes and things.
Yeah, it's very also very at the front end of the OODA loop, right? Or observe, orient, decide, act, right? So, so
Exactly.
observe.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, if you have nothing to act on the information, it's probably not a good metric. That's always a good
right.
a good check,
Indeed.
a good validation, to do. But let's move into the next one, which is more then. Okay, we talked about the measurement, we talked about the high level approach, and more diving into the methodology you use at especially at Dataception in terms of framing those products.
Yeah, exactly. I know that I've used this diagram quite a lot, so I think there's some people on the call who've probably seen this before. But yeah, fundamentally for me, it's about working with the business to fill up the top end of the funnel around all the ideas they want to do, the outcomes they want to do. And it's not, I want to build a single customer view, I need a data warehouse, I need this. It's what's the actual thing you want to do. I want to increase ROI from my marketing. I want to. I've got a new product idea. We want to launch. We want to test it out. How do I quantify risk on this part of this piece of the business? I want to reduce my LTV and stuff. So the idea is you're filling up this funnel of all the ideas. You're then going down the funnel, and then you're doing the business solution framing, as we talked, and testing it out. Testing the hypothesis. You're testing the kind of the value around that. We're using the sort of and measuring that sort of stuff. And then ultimately what you're trying to do through the hierarchy of needs, and as you go down the funnel, what you're doing is you're finding a lot of those things in the funnel of actually they'll disappear. That was a really good idea to start with, but actually that's not a really good idea because A, you can't do it, B, it's not valuable, C, it's the wrong question. Exactly. And we do this, I say we do this a lot with organizations. And what you end up coming up with is kind of this pyramid, as I call it, is kind of this as you go down the hierarchy of analytical needs, each one of those questions potentially could be what I call a data product. So the top one could be a decision model, and that might need a forecast and a KPI underneath it, which might need a bunch of roster metrics from your operations team, or a bunch of click-through rates from your e-commerce, and then obviously there are data that sits on the bottom, and each one of those then becomes a living, breathing product, which actually goes into a portfolio using a tool like UE or to actually manage the life cycle of those, from the value all the way through to the operations of those things, the measurements and that sort of stuff. So yeah, again, like any problem you're trying to solve, you start with a kind of the big picture and you decompose it down, and then you work out exactly what you need to deliver, and then you operate on those things. And they say, I sort of talk about data product ecosystem, and it's sort of living, breathing portfolio of these products that could be, at a very basic level, you could have 1,000, 2,000 metrics, and that could be even for a small organization, but you might have also other ones like forecast models and credit models and, recommendation engines and, LLM type models as well, right? That actually inform, bits and pieces of it. So you need a way of actually managing all that as part of your organization. And this is kind of this funnel approach I found worked really well.
Yeah. And let's dive directly to maybe the portfolio part, because I'm looking at the time, but I think we're good, because that's so I think we talked plenty on the funnel and building those different things, and at the end, that portfolio piece is important to make it work at scale. If you're just building a few products in there or building your first portfolio, you probably can avoid that. And that's one of the things we let's say we met on with John, is saying, okay, how we frame products, and then how we manage that at scale, or how do we animate the process, and so on. So the way we define portfolio is those three things here. The first one is that notion of building a consolidated view of all the different products you have, and whatever the nature, it could be data sets, AI models, dashboards, even looking at your data platform as a product, or or your data platforms as a product. And sometimes, so all those things are important as your core assets, and linking that to your different use cases or initiatives, and then having that lineage with how is that supporting your business priorities, and how you're going to measure that. So that's kind of keeping a clear view on that, along with those different things, is important. I think the second dimension is that you need to be able to drive your governance process around that. How you make those decisions, what you launch, what you stop, what you continue, and for that you always need to have those three dimensions of what is the value, expected value, realized value, what is the risk. And we didn't talk too much about risk, but it's part of qualification also, because if you, especially today, how much do we need that our AI model to be ethical, or do we need to be responsible in terms of energy consumption, or fair, because we are going to apply that to our clients or to employees and stuff like that, is an important part. It's part of the value story in a way. And obviously the cost part, especially when the people are going to jump to Gen AI right now, and they are discovering the cost, and it's shouting and crying everywhere, and the CFO is not really excited to see the bill coming in. So you need to have that value story at the same time. And the last part of the portfolio is that the portfolio is here to manage a life cycle, and that's really important. So early on, it's here to animate the process of again, that ideation process, qualification process, but also all that iterative process of prototyping things, building things, deploying things, and tracking that life cycle. And the last part, which is small here, but it's really important, is that measurement piece. Because you have, again, that product, when it's done, it's in operations, it's in run phase, it's sustained, and it's not the end of the life, because you still have change requests, evolution demands, opportunities for reuse, or opportunities to shut it down. And that's really that portfolio mindset. I always say, think about a financial portfolio. It's not only about adding stuff to your financial portfolio. It's also about discarding stuff if it's not aligned with your goals or with how you want to deliver value. So this removing part is key, because we can't just buy products. That's not something we can do anymore. So, and one thing I wanted to ask is, for me, because I think one of the things here is that when we talk about that, it drives a lot of question about the operating model. How do and so maybe that's something that you have insights on.
Yeah, I mean, the operating model is key, right? I mean, we talk a lot about products and product thinking, and it's like, actually, to product thinking, you need a product organization. Really, it's kind of, I'm teaching to suck eggs, but I think that's one of the biggest things I'm seeing data world really struggling with, because I know the world outside data struggles with it, because that kind of product management mentality. So this business of being able to actually get data in, build a model, or build a piece of analytics with some UX, putting it in front of the business and testing it around. I talk a lot about product market fit, and that's something I've come to quite late, but probably the last 4 or 5 years, and going through that whole process, through startup world and also through launching products with other customers. That is not really a concept that's permeated into the data world, and that's really a key part of the operating model. And it's basically enabling data people, or data product people, should we say, being able to actually ideate and run those kind of processes inside with the business teams in front of them as well. And that's a key part of the operating model as well, right? Bringing that sort of stuff together. Again, a lot of data teams are basically at the data end rather than the business end of that process. So the operating model will be able to do those kind of processes, bring the governance in that. We had a great conversation, I think a couple of days ago around LinkedIn, around kind of how does governance actually work, and data governance, because data gets split around, it gets moved around, it goes all over the place. It's not like I've got a software package that tends to get deployed in one place and is owned by a team, which is where DDD comes from. But data, it's split up. So then, how do you manage that? How do you manage the kind of the policies and governance around that? How do you manage the life cycle of a data product from inception all the way through to retirement? Because again, retirement is, if you're not retiring, then you're not really doing life cycle. You're just building more and more debt, really. How do you actually get a whole organization? How do you get the people together? There's a whole thing around data product managers. What do they actually do? Are they just more project managers? Are they there to kind of see people using data, or actually are they like product managers in a digital world, which they're driving these sort of conversations around ideation around that? So having those sort of pieces in place is super important. And then we talk about tech. Tech still gets quite a bad rep because people start with the tech first, which is absolutely we talk about what the challenges around that. But you need tech to be able to do this. You need good UX. You need to be able to bring on data and prototype it and get it in front of the business really quickly. And all respect to warehouses and lakes and lake houses, they're all type, let's get all the data in first before we do this sort of stuff. And I think this is really part of the operating model that needs to change. This, where we are prototyping products in front of the business with mixed teams as well. So we talk about, I talk about teams having data architects, but also having analytics people in them, also business people in them, almost like small pods of people. We used to call them data commandos, where small well equipped team with specialist skills, but multidisciplinary skills that can go and have these conversations with the business people, can sit in front of them, rather than having have this team do this piece and then another team do another piece and throw it over the fence, this type of stuff. So there is a big operating model change to it as well, bringing those people together to be able to have those kind of conversations, prototype stuff, and then deliver, and ideally push into production without spending 6-12 months to be able to do that. So that is quite a big operating model change for especially large organizations. Smaller organizations, they kind of do this naturally, but large organizations, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, and you just pointed something that is, for me, really a struggle, is that dependency management stuff, and because when it comes about product, and it's one of the things in the mesh, and we're going to probably finish with that, is people consume your product, so you need to care about APIs, and you need to care about not breaking stuff, and and that's also that's a lot of impact on the operating model, because in the mindset of people, it's usually not there, in terms of all the practices or the checks, or how you care about your contracts. And there has been attempts in organization, but I don't know many that are so mature with that, except product organization, of course, because it's part of what they do. But that's a big one, because indeed, if you have hundreds of them, and I remember a story of I don't remember who was saying this one, but there is a company in the US who has built those 30,000 machine learning models in production, and they're very proud about it. Wow. And everyone who talks to them is like, really? But that's scary. I mean, if you say 30,000 stuff in production, and who's caring about that? And actually, they don't have an answer. They didn't have an answer to that. So it's even more scary saying, but you built 30,000 one-time project, and most probably you have opportunities for convergence, whatever. But now you have a huge liability there, and something you should be very scared, even more than proud is fine, but scared is a second, it's a second effect. And you see that something has been lacking. They've been moving very fast, trying to deliver value, trying to show that they're really good and agile and so on. But actually, probably they created a much bigger problem than the one they solved. So that's a big one.
I wonder how many of those are valuable, and whether they actually get the retirement bit right.
That's so many questions. So many questions.
Yeah. It's funny, when I was doing service-oriented architecture, SOA, back in the early 2000s, it's the same problem, right? How do you build a reasonable set of services across a large organization? And the tech bit's actually the easy bit. The hard bit's the governance piece. How do you define and sort of data products really come into that kind of that whole piece. It's like, if I want to build a metric that gives you the total number of sales for the last 6 months, how do I avoid 5 people building that same metric across and reusing them? Finance have one, sales have another one, marketing might have another one. And there's a governance, there's a kind of an overarching governance kind of function, for lack of a better term, to be able to do that. So it's about, I need to have something that does X. Can I go somewhere to find if something does have X already, if that exists? If it does exist, is it right to my requirement? And do I augment that? Or do I build a completely new one based on that? And those are the sort of questions, and typically what happens with the business, they want it, a million miles an hour. So it's like, actually, we haven't got time to go back. And it's also like this, that first product or that first component, whatever it is, servicing these bits of the business, we can't touch that because it comes back to your risk. So actually, let's build it again. And this is where and it's not really a product thing, it's a shared infrastructure thing, right? Fundamentally, I use infrastructure not just in technology, but as in shared componentry, could be business process, whatever. That's the challenge, and that's really a lot of things kind of circle around that. So how do you actually get, when you're sharing components, whatever we call those, products, services, whatever they are, how do you get that point where you get that nice balance between building new ones, but also not spending ages trying to reuse other ones on or duplicate, right?
Yeah, that's and that's one of the topic, and we won't have time today about also how do you kind of price that, because who is in charge of evolving a product that is a need for someone else. I know that Amazon solved that a long time ago. It was one of the mandate when they moved to web services, to your point, which were products in a way, but let's keep that. So maybe I think we're almost at the end. So one last thing is, because we can't finish without talking a bit about the technical piece and what is a data product, and because we want to be a bit controversial. And so one of the big questions that is always a big debate is, what is a data product? Is it just data, or is it more than that? And people have very strong opinions about that. So I'm curious about yours.
Yeah. Okay. So I put these together, and they might be slightly out of date, but you've obviously got a number of different competing views. You've obviously got the data mesh view, which I think slightly changed, but originally it was really just data only. You've got a great piece by Sanjeev Mohan, who kind of talks about data products being there's a range of different characteristics data products have, but you tend to sort of round on like models and data sets and that type of stuff.
That's where you put. Yeah, the way I get it is also the data contracts and all the SLA. So it's more the product and its attributes in a way.
Yeah, the packaging, right? But I think the one of the major differences is the fact that the data mesh was originally just about data. Whereas Sanjeev was included, if you look at the ML models and stuff like that as well. So and then there's obviously the view that what I take and we take is much more this end-to-end delivery, and that's the UX. That's still has the contract, still all that type of stuff. That's data sets, but has the models. You've got to drive a piece of analytics, put it in front of a business user, and that to me is really much more product orientated. So, given what we've just talked about, it's much more in line. On the right-hand side of this diagram, you're looking at end-to-end, you're managing stuff rather than what the ones on the left typically are intermediaries. Or could be intermediaries of that end-to-end process. So that's the way I think about it.
So and I know that many people, because I've been talking to, are very, how to say, rigorous about the fact that it should be data only because it's a data product. And I like something, and what you say is the sense that should we care about that? It doesn't matter, because at the end, in an organization, we build products that deliver value, and this product can be of different nature, and we should not care about that. And I think that's the main thing that is interesting for me, because it can be just a packaged data, because sometimes this is what delivers value and this is what you can monetize. But sometimes it doesn't make any sense, any actual value to put it like that, because it would be just one more data set that you want to make available within the organization. And maybe that shouldn't be a product, or maybe that's a product but more a capability product. I don't know how to frame that. It's like a
foundational component or something, right?
Like how to say, a nail. You need nails to build a furniture, but the nail is a product. But at the end, it doesn't have a tremendous value in itself. So so I think I like this idea of saying you shouldn't bother too much. I think you need definition. This is where your data product pyramid helps a lot, to help people saying what is the nature of that one, and that's where is it just a packaged data? Is it a dashboard? Is it something? So you need to make sure that in your organization you have some kind of vocabulary behind the stuff, if it's helpful to have the nature of the different things. But whatever the level, you need to have this product, mindset and product management principles applies. And at the end, it's product. If you don't want to call all of that data product, and you want to have data products, analytics products, AI products, in a way, whatever, I don't think we care so much, and neither you or I, John, and maybe no one cares, or no one should care. But at the end, align on the vocabulary for you, what matters, but make sure that product principles apply everywhere. I think that's the conclusion of
Well, data product is the outcome of the product management process, and it can change, right? You look in the outside the real world, we don't get bent out of shape around strictly defining a product up front. Like a mortgage product is very different from a running shoe, right? But if I'm a shoe company, I know I'm going to be building shoes, so I use my product vocabulary around the shoe construct, and that's what we come out. But then when I might start with we might want to go out and deliver a new Nike or or it might be a fashion shoe. You know, it's going to change as the thing goes through. But we know what shoes are, so I think you're absolutely right. Andy was saying, what was it? Surely product includes a clothing.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I think yeah. I mean, obviously the product includes the code that runs the product, but you shouldn't confuse in the product its own infrastructure in a way. That is how it's part of it, and how people consume that. That's two very different things for me. I mean, you have if you acquire if you subscribe to UE, my product, you don't care about the infrastructure, but you care about the value it delivers. So does the product comes with the code and everything? Of course, because it doesn't run out of it's not magic. But and it's always the case. So I think it's a great question, and the thing that product always come with its own enablers in a way, infrastructure, whatever you want to call that. So that's a good question maybe to end.
So say hello to Andy. You said hello. No, mate.
So thanks everyone for joining. Thanks, John. Great discussion. Hope it was. I took a lot of fun for me. So hope it was valuable for everyone in the audience. There will be a replay if you missed some of it. And if you have any question on data products, on portfolio management, on data product management, all of that, please reach out to John or myself. I think we are very reachable on LinkedIn, so easy to find, easy to reach out, and thanks again for joining. See you soon, and enjoy the end of the day.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a great discussion. Thanks for all the great questions as well, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.